Haunted Mansion 2023, not to be confused with The Haunted Mansion with Eddie Murphy, which is why I've called it that, is another imagining of the ride at Disney parks. And yes, it's not a remake. I would stand very firmly on that point. It's not a remake at all, it is its own reinterpretation. It does things very differently to the previous one to let us know that it isn't trying to do that film again. This one was directed by Justin Simien and written by Katie Dippold. It stars Lakeith Stanfield, Owen Wilson, Rosario Dawson, Jamie Lee Curtis, Danny DeVito. We have Jared Leto as the Hatbox Ghost. It's a really good cast, and I only watched... I've seen it in pieces, but the previous version, The Haunted Mansion with Eddie Murphy, I watched over time, and then finally in the last sort of 2 or 3 years, I actually watched it in full, and I mostly enjoyed it. I thought there were problems, and I'll talk about those in a bit, but I accepted that it existed. I didn't think I needed to do a video on it. It didn't do anything amazing, so that's why I've never really done a video on it, and this is my first foray into that. But because this is its own thing, I didn't need to do a video on that before. We know it exists, but this exists on its own merits. And everyone here, like all of the cast that I've mentioned and some of the ones that I haven't, I've enjoyed in a lot of stuff they've done. And all of them brought what they've learned over the years to the roles, I think, here. We see a lot of good nuanced performances from some of these actors. We see, yeah, some out-and-out crazy moments, of course, but Jared Leto is probably the most tolerable to the cast members, probably in this film, given the stuff he's done in the past. But even, yeah, everyone here, I think, did a really, really good job. And the fact that, you know, time has passed and we can do different things, we can reinterpret things in new ways and actually realise it in the way that we intend, given the technology. I did really enjoy this. It's always going to draw comparisons to the previous iteration. Of course it will. And for me, like I say, even though I've only watched it in pieces over the years and then finally done it very recently, still, if anyone says Madame Leota to me, I see Jennifer Tilly. There is no way around this. She is indelibly linked to that. So even though Jamie Lee Curtis is an amazing performer in her own right, is great in everything she does, well, almost. I'm sure there's some absolute howlers out there. Every actor has them. But even with that respect that I have for her, it was still a big change for me. It was still a big adjustment. But she did it so well. And the fact that we got to see her in full, not just a floating head. I think the fact that they went into backstories and things like that a bit, they really spent the time on making sure that there weren't going to be weird questions about why is that, why is that, why is that. They tried to make everything make as much sense as possible, revealed why certain things happened earlier on in the film, and all of this, and the fact that it hewed a lot closer to the ride. The fact is, the ride isn't about someone's wife being technically stolen, I guess, by a ghost. That was the previous film with Eddie Murphy. It veered too much, I think, away, and I think that's why people don't think of it so highly in the Disney pantheon. But this one kept more in tune with the ride. It wasn't about one ghost trying to steal the wife of someone because he's really sad. It was a malicious ghost trying to bring that number up to 1,000. And I love it. I loved it for the ride that it took me on. This is what I want from Disney adaptations of rides. It's got to make me feel like I'm on a ride in a way, if that makes sense. So all the funny moments, all the crazy moments, all the heart as well, it's got to take you on, if you'll pardon the sort of pun here, a roller coaster. And this does the job well. Is it an amazing film? No. And I've said, you know, I'm definitely trying to champion the more acceptable films. This is fine. It does what it needs to, gets in, gets out, tells a story, has a really good emotional core, and I enjoyed it. The effects are well done, and yeah, I think if you've got a few minutes spare, well, obviously more than a few minutes, like a film length spare, then you're not going to go wrong. If you've already got a Disney Plus subscription, it's not like it's going to cost you any more. I can heartily recommend it, and it's a good, fun romp. And the only big negative I'm going to say is more on me, the fact that I wasn't prepared enough, and this is now being released in November instead of during October. But for me, Halloween is year-round anyway. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Give it a watch. You'll definitely enjoy it if you like the kind of stuff I tend to recommend. So until next time, as always, thank you for watching, and take care. Buh.